Khodynka Tragedy, a dark event in Russian history, became a dreadful testament to the consequences of misinformation and panic. This calamity is deeply etched into the Russian societal psyche and continues to haunt its collective memory. This tragedy unfolded on a day of intended celebration, May 30th, 1896, a day earmarked for the coronation of Tsar Nicholas II, a ruler who would later profoundly influence the course of Russian history. Tsar Nicholas II's coronation was held in the city of Moscow, an architectural marvel known for its magnificent structures and regality. The main event was set to take place at Khodynka Field, chosen due to its capability of accommodating a large congregation. A renowned historian, Professor Ivanov, asserts, "This was the grandest celebration in Russia since Peter the Great's time, a day of national pride." As the sun rose on May 30th, the populace of Moscow, brimming with anticipation, began to assemble at Khodynka Field. Their purpose was twofold: to rejoice in the ascension of their new Tsar, and to partake in the treats and gifts that were pledged as part of the coronation's festivities. The atmosphere was vibrant as day broke, filled with the joyous spirit of the people. However, as the day wore on, the crowd began to swell and grow increasingly agitated. An eyewitness account from a local merchant, Pavel Alexeyev, recalls, "A sudden shift in the crowd's mood was palpable. From joyous anticipation, it turned to restlessness, then fear." A rumor began to circulate that there would be a shortage of food and gifts. This rumor, akin to a spark in dry grassland, ignited fear and panic among the gathering. The celebratory mood swiftly devolved into a state of pandemonium, as the frightened masses began a desperate scramble for their share. The crowd, once jubilant, became a turbulent sea dread and chaos, with all semblance of order disappearing in the melee. The ensuing chaos led to an unimaginable disaster. Thousands of unsuspecting individuals were trampled, crushed under the wave of mass hysteria. The pleas of the victims were drowned out by the cacophony of the panic-stricken mob. The intended site of celebration morphed into a horrifying spectacle of death and terror. The Khodynka tragedy sent shockwaves around the globe, states modern historian Dr. Lisa Kirschenbaum. The death toll was staggering, claiming over 1,300 lives that fateful day. The disaster left a lasting imprint, not solely on survivors, but the entire nation. The Khodynka tragedy, resulting in the loss of more than 1,300 innocent lives, has ever since been a chilling scar on the face of Russian history. The aftermath of the Khodynka tragedy was straight from a scene of disorder and chaos. The lack of organization and preparedness for such a large-scale event was glaringly evident. The historian, Dr. Alexander Ivanov, provides a chilling testimony of the disarray that plagued the event from the get-go. He states, "When we talk about organization, it's not just about having a plan. It's about having a comprehensive, thoughtful plan that takes into account the scale and scope of the situation. Regrettably, such a plan was absent here, leading to catastrophic consequences." The aftermath also bared the lack of foresight and prediction glaringly. Emphasizing on this, disaster management expert, Prof. Natalia Kuznetsova comments, "Predicting the scale of such a disaster is challenging, almost impossible. However, preparedness fundamentally involves planning for the worst-case scenario, ensuring that a safety net is in place if things go wrong. Unfortunately, in this instance, we saw the stark absence of such a safety net." Furthermore, the aftermath highlighted the grim reality of the deep divisions in society at the time. As sociologist Dr. Sergei Petrov puts it, "It shed light on the stark inequality and poverty experienced by the Russian people. The society was marked by haves and have-nots, with the haves seemingly oblivious to the struggles of the have-nots. The poverty was not just economic but also social and emotional. It was a society where the rich and poor lived in parallel universes, an insurmountable gulf between them." The government's response in the wake of the Khodynka tragedy was sluggish and insufficient, marked by denial and deflection. As political analyst Dr. Ivan Volkov notes, "The tragedy served to underscore the repercussions of negligence, the far-reaching consequences of poor planning. It was a brutal reminder of what occurs when an event of such magnitude is not given the consideration it deserves." The long-term impact on Russian society was profound. The tragedy deepened social divides and exacerbated feelings of resentment and disillusionment among the populace. The historian, Dr. Marina Sokolova, states, "The tragedy underscored the stark impact of social inequality. It held up a mirror to a society that was divided, marked by stark disparities, where the distance between the haves and the have-nots was vast and seemingly unbridgeable." Public reaction was one of shock, disbelief, and anger. The tragedy shook the faith of many in the ruling elite, sparking protests and calls for reform. It is a somber chapter in history that should not be forgotten. It serves as a stark lesson from history, a lesson that we would do well to remember. As Dr. Ivanov poignantly concludes, the Khodynka tragedy in all its grimness is a grim reminder of what happens when we fail to plan and consider the worst-case scenario. Today, the Khodynka field stands as a deeply meaningful memorial to the victims of the tragedy, serving as a poignant remnant of the horrors that befell that day. Situated in the pulsating heart of Moscow, this ground of reverence continues to resonate with the woeful cries of the innocent victims of the Khodynka tragedy. This field, once a site radiating joy and celebration, now stands silent and solemn, a haunting embodiment of the needless loss of human life. Over the course of time, the Khodynka field has evolved. It is no longer simply a patch of earth, but a symbolic testament to human suffering and resilience. Modern-day Russia recognizes the Khodynka field as a place of reflection and learning. It is visited by thousands each year, many of whom are historians, students, and common citizens seeking to comprehend the gravity of the incident that unfolded over a century ago. Local Muscovites, too, share a profound connection with this hallowed ground. Olga, a resident living nearby, says, "Every time I pass by Khodynka field, I'm reminded of the fragility of human life and the importance of effective leadership." Historian Dr. Ivanov expresses a similar sentiment, emphasizing, "The Khodynka tragedy underlines the catastrophic outcome of poor organization. It serves as a case study for the importance of crowd management and safety protocols." As we remember the victims of the Khodynka tragedy, let us not merely mourn their loss, but strive to learn from the egregious mistakes of the past. The lessons of the Khodynka tragedy go beyond just historical significance. They serve as a stark reminder of the importance of valuing human life over pomp. This in mind, we must work towards creating a society that values the lives of its citizens and prioritizes their safety above all else. We can work towards a world where every individual, regardless of their social standing, is accorded the respect and dignity they deserve. In doing so, we honor the memory of the victims and ensure that their sacrifice is not in vain. We affirm our commitment to building a future where such tragedies are not just remembered, but serve as powerful reminders of our collective responsibility to protect and preserve human life. Thank you for watching, and please consider subscribing to our channel for more dark historical insights and stories.